My name is Sean Spence. I am CEO of Armchair Telethon, the 100% online, easy for you fundraiser. Never leave your armchair. We're in Columbia, Missouri, and operating all over the country. So now we're in, it's like 15 states, I think. We are approaching 8 months old. This was a COVID born company that is not COVID dependent, but we can certainly talk about that. And if you would like my origin story, I'm happy to give that to you in the Q&A. Y1MC, I've presented to almost 51 million cups now, and some of the groups like me to present 3 questions and some 1 question and some at the beginning and some at the end and some both. So I just do it all at the same time. What problems should we prepare for as we build a virtual company? And I've got employees all around the country now. Really, they're all contractors, so I just say employees. We know how that is in the entrepreneurial world. And then I also have people doing data entry and some other things in 3 additional countries. So that's all pretty cool. But we're having to learn so much about building a virtual company, which I love questions, and I also love to share what we've learned. We need introductions to nonprofits who want to raise money and awareness, which is every single nonprofit you've ever met in your life. So we can be helpful to them. They can be helpful to us. And, I love to have these entrepreneurial conversations. So if you do ever want to have that kind of conversation, I love to hear about what you're doing. I love to share about what I'm doing. You're welcome to email me at sean@betternonprofits.com. In Q&A, if you want to talk about, we're having a branding transition. We're at the tail end of it. So you'll see where I talk about Armchair Telethon. My email is Better Nonprofits. I'm happy to do that story in the Q&A if you would like. The problem that we're solving is very simple. Nonprofits and others need money. They need to get their message out. They need to do it less expensively. We've come up with a solution to do that. We create virtual telethons that absolutely change the game in nonprofit fundraising. I've been in nonprofit fundraising professionally for about 28 years now. This is something that blows my mind. We will talk about things here that I would not have believed, 7, 8, 9 months ago, but I'm happy to get as deep into those things as you want. Now, some of the people in this room are closer to my age. Some people are much younger. And so telethons mean different things to us. So many of us grew up with the Jerry Lewis telethon, for example. So you think muscular dystrophy, you think it's long form entertainment. And in Jerry's case, it was like 24 hours long. You've got comedians, you've got singers, you've got dancers, you've got all these great, well-known entertainers who would do things over the 24 hours on a single stage, broadcast on your television to millions of people. It was a pretty big deal for a long time, like 40, 50 years, something like that. And in between those entertainers, there would be somebody talking about muscular dystrophy, somebody talking about the problem, somebody talking about the research, somebody talking about why you should donate. And of those millions of people watching, a tiny, tiny percentage of them then called in and donated or pledged to the Muscular Dystrophy Association nationally. But because there were so many people, the law of large numbers made that tiny, tiny percentage a bunch of people, and hundreds of millions of dollars were raised. So it was a big deal. We take that whole thing that I just described, long form entertainment, interspersed with nonprofit fundraising for specific charities, and we stream that whole thing to the web. We stream it to Facebook, YouTube, we've done Twitch, we're working on LinkedIn, Periscope, some other things. We take that whole thing and we create a virtual event that is a wonderful entertainment that raises money. Our primary market is nonprofit organizations. So think about your Boys and Girls Clubs, your food banks, your whatever it is. We've done the Shaken Baby Alliance. I mean, the things that I get to work with, we did that. That's national. We've already done the first one. We're already planning the second one because they were so happy with it. Literally, the director said, this is the best event we have ever done. So that kind of freaked me out. But it's amazing the kinds of things. We've worked with refugees. We've worked with the Shaken Baby Alliance. We've worked with food banks. I mean, it's just amazing the things that I get to spend my day doing. Business model is very, very simple. Thanks to some proprietary processes, we can do what we do anywhere, right? I'm literally sitting in the armchair where this company was invented. Um, we can do it anywhere from anywhere. That is a thing that sets us apart. And actually, so far, I really thought that we would have more competition by now, but we really don't. Because it is actually pretty difficult. Like it would be very easy. Jay is smart and he wears nice looking earphones. So he could create in Iowa City with some help and some thinking it through, he could create a virtual telethon for his favorite charity in Iowa City. But if I said, Jay, create a virtual telethon in, let's say, San Antonio, Texas, and you don't have any friends there and you don't have any staff there, I want you to create an event that is economical to create, that is profitable for you, that does something really great for the charity. You're never ever going to go there, and you're going to just do it from scratch, sitting there in your office. Jay would find that very hard to do. The vast majority of the world, even professional event planners, would find that very hard to do because of some weird things I've done over my career. I've kind of fallen into a situation where we've learned how to do that. And we've also learned a lot of things over the last 7-8 months. We charge a fee at the beginning, we do the work, we leave. That's it. Our business model is very, very simple. Cash flow is very good because we get all the money before we do anything. We do have increasing virality, so doing a telethon attracts other telethons. Secret sauce, small first mover advantage, which I mentioned. It's actually bigger than I realized because there's still not a lot of people doing what I do. Proprietary processes. We have a national network of super connected influencers that I'm happy to talk about if you all would like to, because it has applications to any business. But on my advisory board, I've got a 4-term big city mayor. I've got a guy who is an executive at Netscape, right? This is another age thing. Some of us are going to know this. He was an executive at Netscape when they were the largest IPO in history. I have a woman who has George Clooney's cell phone and he will call her back. I have a 3-star general, right? So really kind of cool people that are helping us grow this, because our goal is to build a truly national company. Our goal is to build $1 billion company that raises billions for charity. Because if we make $1 billion as a company, that means we've raised like 10, 20 billion dollars for charity. So far, we're nowhere. I don't want to make this a bigger thing than it is. So far, we've raised $250,000. I suspect we'll make it to $500,000 by the end of the year. Competitive analysis, I've talked a little about that. Very little competition, much less than I expected to have by now. I do believe in 3 to 5 years, every nonprofit in the country is going to either be doing a telethon like this or trying to do it. I believe I will have a lot more competition. Traction, we're doing great. We were profitable before I even opened my bank account. We want to grow 15% month over month. It's more like 25% month over month right now. I think that's probably going to increase, but it's fine if it doesn't. Questions someone might ask, scan that real quick, because these are just some questions that I've thrown in that if you knew my story, it can lead to some interesting conversation or learning something that you might particularly be interested in. So I just throw that in and I'm happy to talk about it in Q&A. Here are my questions again. What problems should we prepare for as we build a virtual company? That's something I'm constantly struggling with. Going pretty well, but still a constant struggle. We need introductions to nonprofits who want to raise money and awareness. And feel free to connect with me at Sean@betternonprofits.com. Thank you, 1 million cups. On to Q&A, my favorite part.
Excellent. Any questions? Who wants to lead us off?
Well, I'll ask kind of one of the questions you posted there. What's your history? I'm curious about the Better Nonprofits and what led you to this.
Sure. I'm a serial entrepreneur. I am mostly a startup and turnaround guy related to the business world. I also have a very long history in the nonprofit world. and a pretty long history in politics, but that doesn't really relate to this except for a lot of the lessons I learned in politics, like building networks very quickly, building organizations very quickly, reaching, frankly, powerful, rich people very quickly. Those are all kinds of things that get applied to sales and business building and that sort of thing. So that's a lot of my history. I was I had just left working for an organization that was actually a community radio station. And I had no radio background at all. I went there as a business guy because they were on the verge of bankruptcy. When I went there, they were averaging literally, I don't know how they were staying open, but they were literally having like $2,000 a month in the bank at any given time. Um, and when I left them with over $150,000 in the bank, and it was a very successful. I was there for 2 years, and so I'd left there, and I was just kind of trying to figure out what my next thing was going to be. Am I going to go work for somebody? Am I going to start something? What am I going to do? It's hard, and entrepreneurs will understand this. It can be very hard if you're an entrepreneur to find a job because you do lots of different things, right? So I had more jobs in my first 20 years than most people have in their entire lives, right? In fact, more in my first 10 years than I had, especially in politics. So often I've had to start a business simply because it's hard for me to find a job, right? Because I've been my own boss and all that so much. So I was trying to figure out what I was going to do. I started this little nonprofit consulting, primarily to deal with fundraising consulting, called Better Nonprofits. And from that, I ended up having the idea for Armchair Telethon. And so Better Nonprofits really morphed into Armchair Telethon, and we don't do any of the things Better Nonprofits was supposed to do. And it just all became, because by the way, like 2 months after I founded Better Nonprofits, COVID hit, right? So the entire world changes. Nobody wants to hire. They don't know what to do. Nonprofits can't raise money. It was just such a nutty time. Um, Quickly, my story about how I created Better Non or Armchair Telethon. Um, I'd been home for a couple of months with COVID, not me with COVID, but we were in COVID and the world of COVID, like all of you. I was bored. Like many of you, I was feeling a little bit guilty. I'm a very community oriented guy, right? My history is politics. My history is nonprofits. My history is trying to do things for my community. And I was feeling guilty because I wasn't doing anything except for me and my family. And that's just me, my wife, and my dog, right? So I'm not doing anything for anybody except three of us. And I needed to do something. So I started thinking, what could I do? What could I do? What could I do that somebody else might not be able to do? And I have to be able to stay in this chair that you're, you know, looking at me sitting in right now. And then I thought, and I don't know why I thought about this because I'd never seen these words together before. I thought, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to create a virtual telethon, right? Which is what I described for you earlier. And I'll do that for the local COVID effort. And then I thought, yeah, that could be a good idea. So I spent about 2 hours. I made some calls, decided I really would do it, decided money would go to the local community foundation. They did have a specific COVID relief fund. I know the director, so he said, yeah, sure, give us money. And I have no idea if it's going to raise any money. I don't have any clue at all, but we'll give it a shot. It'll be fun. And then because I'm stupid, this was all on a Friday. It had the idea at 2 o'clock. By 4 o'clock, decided to do it 8 days later on the following Saturday because I wanted to do something and make a splash and really inspire others to do something. So decided to create this event, which was at that time a 12-hour event. Now we usually do 8 hours. We mostly do 8 hours, but we did 12 at that time for some reasons I can explain if you want to ask. Um, and we did that and created an event from scratch, right? So went from zero, the idea at 2 o'clock on a Friday, to a 12-hour televised on the web, Facebook and YouTube at that time, telethon that raised money for them. I was going to break my arm patting myself on the back. We raised 5,000. We raised more like $35,000. It was a huge success. Everybody was very happy. It was absolutely nuts. And I'm a serial entrepreneur. So that really was supposed to be a one-off thing. I was never going to do it again. I do lots of things where I never do it again. I do it one time, I move on to whatever the next thing is. And I thought, but as I was, getting there, I started to realize, I could actually do this anywhere. I could do this in Iowa City. I could do this anywhere. Maybe I should just launch a business, right? So bottom line is, got through a successful telethon, got a lot of media coverage. That was nice. Picture in the paper, all that kind of stuff. And thought, okay, well, where else could I do this? And that's where the business really started to take off. That was a very long answer, Liz.
It was a good answer though. That was it was good to hear your story and how it kind of came together.
Thank you. It's been very fun.
Yeah. What are the steps involved in creating one of these virtual telethons? A specific one.
Sure. Great question. What we do is first, and this is a real key, right? So this is kind of a trade secret that I kind of invented, but it kind of didn't because it's standard for events. We create what we currently call an advisory board, which is people who want to help. And usually it's who you think of, right? It's volunteers from the community. It's volunteers with the organization. It's big muckety mucks, right? People who are a big deal in the local community because they have money and they have connections to money and all of that. So that is really the foundation of what we create. Now, this leads to a mistake that I made on the very first telethon we did, which then ended up being a really great thing. As I said, when I did that first telethon, it was 8 days from beginning to have a glass of wine and go to bed and be done. And so I didn't have time to say no a lot, right? I said no if it was going to cause a problem or if I knew it was going to cause a problem. Other than that, I pretty much said, you want to help? Sure. All right. You want to do something? Sure. Whatever you want to do. And there was a lot of that. And so what that led to was an advisory board of 58 people, which anybody involved in the nonprofit world, you can think about that advisory board being the planning committee or the event organizing committee, or, it's really kind of the same kind of thing. Well, most of us in the nonprofit world, if you walked into a room with your planning committee for an event and there were 58 people there, most of us would walk back out and never go back. Most of us would quit. We talk about herding cats. I mean, that would be like herding mean cats, right? Because when you get into a room like that, you've got everybody wants to make sure, not everybody, but there are people who want to make sure their opinions get heard. There are people whose their opinions are stupid. You get people who are so fixated on what color the napkins are. For the love of God, what color are the napkins going to be, right? And so there's all of this stuff that you have to deal with. And so usually we say, hey, a really great organizing committee is 8 people or 10 people, 15 people starts to get large, but yeah, okay, we can deal with that. And the larger it gets after that, then the more problematic it becomes. Because I accidentally let this thing grow to 58, because I just said no to nobody, what I then learned was it actually is different in the virtual planning world. And so I had an advisory board of 58 people, and they helped in a variety of ways, reaching out in the community in a variety of ways. And as with any other kind of, really this applies to your nonprofit fundraiser. It applies to having your friends over to, help you move. It's what I call the rule of thirds. About a third are going to be awesome, right? They're the ones who are actually going to help you move your furniture, and they're going to be great, and the guy's going to bring the truck and whatever. Another third is going to be just fine, and you're going to be glad they're there and they're doing work and they're just good folks. A third are going to be a complete waste of time, and you're like, why the crap are they here? They're just eating my pizza and they're not even moving a lamp. They're not doing anything. And really everything you do is, if you have volunteers doing something like that, my experience has been that that's the math of it, give or take, whatever, but usually a third, a third, a third. And what I found was with that group of 58 people, the rule of thirds still was there, right? But the third of people who were awesome was bigger than the whole committee usually is. And the third of people who were just fine were bigger than the whole committee usually is. And then the third of people, and this, thank God, was the surprise because it might have killed me. The third of the people who are the worthless, shall we say, which is rude, I apologize, they're not in the room with you, right? So the amount of damage that they can do, the amount of making people not want to be in the room, the amount of wasting time, the amount of just sitting there being somebody who's obviously not contributing, right? They're not there. So they don't actually cause the problem that they normally do. So one, we build the advisory board because now we've got a really powerful group of helpers. Two, what else do we have? We have, in this case, 58 overlapping social media networks. And that was a massive discovery because that is the secret to the marketing of this whole thing. Those overlapping social media people, along with them performers and sponsors and the organization, they provide all these ways for free to reach people and to attract people to your telethon. And so that becomes the foundation of the telethon. Then we recruit the performers, we build a schedule. Now we do them 8 hours instead of 12. The reason we do that is because, and I didn't even know this, right? When I decided to do this and in fact announced publicly, like in the newspaper, that I was going to do this, there was, I didn't even know if it was going to go to Facebook. I didn't have any idea what was going to happen. I didn't know what technology we were going to use. We now use a thing called StreamYard, which some of you may or may not have, most of you have not heard of it, but some of you have. But on Wednesday, before we had that first telethon, I still did not know what technology we were going to use. So now we know. Now, one of the things we learned, by the way, so we're doing a 12-hour telethon, and I found out with probably on Thursday, maybe on Friday before the Saturday we had the event, that Facebook has a 10-hour limit of how long you can stream to it. So I'm getting ready to stream a 12-hour event that Facebook is going to cut me off after 10 hours. And 8 hours is the, Facebook is 8 hours. YouTube is 10 hours, right? So we're doing a 12-hour event and we're going to get cut off at 2 different times on 2 different platforms that by this point I've started announcing that we're going to do, even though I still don't really know how we're going to do it. And it's about to be a big problem. So what we did for that was we broke it into 2. We did 6 hours of the telethon and then invited everybody and told them, I'm sorry, you got to go to another link, right? So we know how all that is, right? I mean, if we had to stop in the middle of this, which by the way, I had to do once because of hackers with a Zoom for 1 million cups. I forget which city was having horrible hackers. And they were like, all right, I'm going to email everybody and I'll post on Facebook a Google place to go. And we all had to switch. But think about that. We've got an audience that's attending this event and I got to give them a totally new place to go. I didn't know if any of them would come back. I didn't know if the second 6 hours of this telethon, because that's what we do, we broke it into 6 and 6 to deal with both the 2 different time limits. And we didn't know if they'd come back. Short story, they did come back. The second 6 hours raised more money than the first 6 hours. So that was awesome. So Joe, obviously I give incredibly long answers to questions, but we've built the advisory board, we build the schedule, we recruit the people. Again, because of some of those proprietary sources, I know how to do that anywhere from anywhere, whether I've ever been there or not. Sometimes it's harder than others. We've got one tomorrow that is, frankly, has been very difficult, but it's going to be a big success. But we're dealing with that. And then you do it. right? And we manage the whole thing from StreamYard, where Erin is going to be playing her flute. So she signs in basically like she just did with YouTube or with a Zoom. She goes to a virtual back room. She hangs out there until I put her up on stage and she plays her flute. Aaron is a comedian, so he's also in the back room. As soon as Aaron is done, she says goodbye. I take her off. We put Aaron back on. Then we bring on Jay to talk about the nonprofit, right? So that's the kind of thing we do. All during that, we're projecting on the screen stuff like, hey, we just got $10 donated. Hey, we just got $50 donated, because we're pushing people to Jay's charity to give there. They give the money directly there. For the most part, I don't handle the money. I usually don't. I have a couple of times because charities have asked us to, but we mostly just send it directly to the charity. And so we don't have to worry. The reason we did that in the beginning was because I didn't want people worrying about, is the money really going to go to the community foundation, right? I just didn't want to argue about it. I didn't want to have to, prove myself. And is Sean actually going to give this money to the nonprofit, or is he going to buy a new car, right? So we didn't want to have to deal with that. So that's it. We do the event, we're done, we go away, we do another event. Next question.
Sean, this is Eric. Can you show us like a screenshot or something of what it looks like to the viewers? Do you have a resource like that you could throw up on the screen? I'm curious to what it actually appears like for what's the experience, the visual experience.
Well, that's interesting. Nobody has ever asked me to do that. And because you did, I am talking and I am going there, and I'm going to show you a very quick clip, which just had not occurred to me until now that I could do.
I've been told I asked very...
Well, here it comes. I'm sharing my screen, and you're going to see just a little bit.
We are so excited today to share our telethon to help raise funds.
Okay, so you all can see that.
Boys and Girls Club of
Yep.
Columbia location. We want to give a very special shout out thank you to First State Community Bank for sponsoring this telethon, which is presented by...
So for the viewers, it's kind of the same as just watching a Facebook video or a YouTube video. You're handling all this technical things on the back end, right?
Okay, so I stopped sharing. So there you can see what I'm talking about. There, I had to shut it down. But so it's that
perfect.
kind of thing.
Very cool. Yeah, very cool.
Thank you. Yeah, one of these days I'm going to create a video from that, obviously, for 2 or 3, 30 seconds or 2 minutes or whatever. But yeah, that's what it is. So you were able to see, and that, by the way, was the very first telethon we did, just because I knew how to get to it the quickest on their Facebook page for the, oh no, that wasn't the very first one we did. That was like the third or fourth one that we did. So that one was much better than that first one we did. But now we've done, I think tomorrow is going to be our 17th one, something like that. So they just, every single one just gets better and better.
Sure. That's great. So what's the smallest organization you will work with?
Yeah, well, we actually have made a couple of changes because, again, I'm a pretty community involved guy. And so a big part of this, I mean, I'm not trying to be anything I'm not. I want to make money, right? I want to build $1 billion company, which is nuts. But I have people who've done that who are involved, and so maybe we're going to do it. But I would not be nearly as interested in doing that if that did not mean we were then raising 10 or 20 times that amount for charity, which is very important to me. So we have always said, come to us, we'll tell you if we can do it. We tried all kinds of things. We very quickly found that very small charities and very small communities were not really our cup of tea. And so then what we did is at some point, and I didn't have this idea, one of my team did, had the idea to take a telethon and create a telesprint, right? So it's a shorter version. It's a 3-hour version of the 8-hour telethon that is less expensive for us to do. We do it for like we do it for $1,500. And so because of that, we can do much smaller. But until we learned that, we were doing the larger, more expensive ones, and they were still successful. So for example, the first one we did was for a tiny, tiny organization in a tiny, tiny town. You've never heard of the town. You've never heard of the organization. They're both in tiny Indiana. I've never been there. I'm never going to go there. Lovely, lovely people, but no name recognition for the charity. Some in the community, but not a lot. And they still actually did well. They raised $13,000, and they were happy with that. It cost them $3,000 to do it. And I wasn't happy with it. And it was so much harder. I mean, really, that was I was happy that we could raise that amount of money for them. It just wasn't as high a margin as we prefer. And it was really, 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 really hard to get the entertainers, which I knew. I mean, we were starting to build a national, which we have now, a national, stable of entertainers all over the country, and we use them. But the smaller it is, we now do the telesprint for the really small ones. We prefer to do 75,000 population and above is what we prefer.
Hey, Sean, I have a question about kind of the organization of it.
Sure.
I don't know if you've ever worked with Pascal's Pals, but I know Sylvie down there in Columbia.
Oh, yeah.
They run an amazing in-person event. And so I also have another nonprofit that's smaller that also kind of depended on an annual gala for most of the fundraising. So, very little income throughout the year, and then $30,000 all at once, for some in-person event. And obviously those have been canceled. But one of the things I was wondering is when you're doing these telethons, which we've never even done anything remotely like that, how much of that organizing work is on the nonprofit, and how much of that do you help with, or do you guys kind of give some best practices, but it's still up to the nonprofit to line up all the talent, to come up with the entire script, and you're just basically providing the technology, or do you kind of help with the telethon organization part as well?
We actually do most of it. What we tell people is you can be as involved or as not involved as you want. And we create it from beginning to end. And what I generally tell people is if you don't have time because you're running your organization and whatever, and you need to create this thing that makes more money, and then you just say, I don't want to see you. The event is on the 17th. I don't want to see you until the 19th when the money is in my bank account, and I don't want to hear from you. Just make it happen, and you can use our name. Then we can do that, and we can create a successful event. It will be more successful the more involved you are in key ways, right? So there are some things you don't need to be spending time scheduling people and even finding people, but Aaron, you've got a musician who you want to recommend, and so we're happy. Just give me their names. You've got advisory board members. They're different things. We'll give you a list of things you can do if you want to do them, which, by the way, getting sponsors is obviously something that the organization is going to do dramatically better than we're going to do. And so generally what we're trying to do is guide organizations to only spend their time where it's going to have the biggest impact for them. And then we take care of all the, crappy little details, which I actually really enjoy. And then we're also able to help with the fundraising. That's a large part of my background, and so we get involved with that. By the way, this will be slightly interesting to everybody, a little bit more interesting to Aaron. Pascal's Pals is an organization here that deals with children's cancer. Primarily, they deal with our local children's hospital, And Pascal was a young girl who died of cancer, and her mother, Sylvie, runs the thing. I actually know quite a lot about them, Aaron, because years and years ago, I used to freelance for our business newspaper, which was just a networking thing, right? So everybody, there's a suggestion. If you want a great business networking thing, go write for your local business newspaper. I know you've got one there. And so I did that. And I wrote a cover story on Pascal's Pals. And so that's why I know them. I wrote about them from a business perspective. So anyway, those are the kinds of things that we do. Aaron, can I answer anything else about that?
Well, yeah, one follow-up question. 8 days sounds insane, obviously, and I'm sure it was.
Yeah,
What is
it
your
was.
more ideal time frame when someone says, "Hey, I want to do this telethon"? By
Yeah,
default, what do you usually tell them as far as like a timeline?
6 or more, 6 weeks, 6 weeks or more. Um, we can do it in less. Um, I should charge more if they want it in less. We're not really doing that yet. We probably will be. Um, we have, but I've also got an event. Um, so the Shaken Baby Alliance, I think I mentioned that at the beginning. They had their telethon. That's a national organization. Um, it was successful. They wanted to do it again. They've already paid us for the next one, and we're doing that in, I think, September, right? So we're doing a little bit of a ramp up to that, a slow ramp up, but we're already starting to build that event. Um, we have other events that have been planned for months. We've got another one coming up in February that's been planned for 2 months. And, in order to get on the calendar, they have to pay. So if they know they're going to have an event, they pay me and on we go.
It's awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sean, another question. How do you think the post-COVID world, if we can imagine that, close our eyes and imagine that, how do you think that might impact your business?
Yeah, honestly, I think, well, I've learned some things about that. So the reason why I had to pause for a minute there was because the answer I would have given 2 months ago uh, is slightly different than the answer I will give you today. Um, Here's the answer I would have given you 2 months ago, which still is basically the same. And that is that this is not about COVID. This is about the evolution of the internet, the evolution of online fundraising, and the evolution of the way we consume our media. And so really those things are the key reasons for the success of what I'm doing, with COVID being a turbocharger and a ringing bell that let people know, oh crap, we got to find something else to do. Here's this other thing, right? Now, so what I believe is that if COVID is gone in another year, which it will be to an extent, certainly, then I believe that we will still be in a place where there are more people doing telethons today than they are today. I believe my company will be doing dramatically more than we are today. In 3 to 5 years, I believe everybody and their brother will be doing these things in the same way that internet consumption, entertainment consumption online, and online donating, all of those things have skyrocketed for a decade and will continue to for a very long time. Now, the difference, Eric, is that we had a little bit of a uptick or a downtick, however you want to think about it, right? But for a minute there, it started to look better. All the rates were going down. Everybody, and maybe there's somebody in this room who's an anti-masker or whatever. I am not. Whatever you are, I respect it. That's fine. You're just wrong. But we had a time there where people were starting to think, oh, this doesn't matter. And so, of course, we saw the death rates rise, the symptoms rise, the everything rise. Now everything's getting shut down again. We're about to have statewide and local shutdowns all over the country, right? So there was this period where people were falsely secure. And I knew it wasn't a long-term problem, but it started to be a short-term problem, right? So I lost some deals that I felt sure I would get because they were like, oh, no, we're starting to schedule our events again, right? I'm already starting to get calls from those people again saying, oh, crap, we really shouldn't have said no. We should have said yes. I believe that'll happen again, and it might happen several times, and that's okay. That's fine. We'll get all that figured out. In 3 to 5 years, my business will be huge, and on we go.
I love that optimism.
I do have that. Thank you, Erin.
I really loved the questions that someone might ask that you had shared in your presentation. I'd love to get into, I know we don't have time to answer all of them, but tell us about this. Is it hard to start or hard to launch a startup with multiple sclerosis?
Great question, Erin. I do have MS. I've had MS since, well, probably a little longer, but I was diagnosed in 2003. I have at various points what people would consider a more serious case. Anybody's got it is serious, but it's been worse at different times. I am a wheelchair user. I'm not an all-the-time wheelchair user, but I am an everyday wheelchair user if I leave my house, right? So I can I can walk to my car, but if I'm going more than half a block, right, and then know I'm going to be able to sit down immediately, then I have to use my wheelchair. So that's the kind of thing that could stop people from starting a business. Now, what I would argue is that it has been absolutely it has not hampered me at all. And I've talked to groups about this, and I do a little bit of a talk about different things like this. The fact is, it really hasn't been very different from if Aaron or Jay or Matt or whomever, if any of you all were starting your own business, there hasn't been a difference. I have had to think about what are the things that are going to be different for me, and what are the things I'm going to have to accommodate for. But honestly, because I'm an online business, there's been very little I've had to accommodate for. And so I recommend, if you're an entrepreneur, figure out how to do a virtual business. I've had to figure it out in part because that's the kind of service we offer, in part because I have limitations that you don't, like I can't manage an event anyway, right? I used to have an event management company, and I actually could, but I shut it down because it took me some number of months to figure out, to transition from I can walk with a cane to I am a wheelchair user now. And I didn't quickly enough navigate running large scale events, in-person events at that time, using a wheelchair or on my cane. I just said, oh, I can't stand for long enough to do these events, so I had to stop, right? So I would recommend virtual companies pretty much all the time, because you're going to be able to reach more people. Obviously, you can't serve cheeseburgers, but there are all kinds of things you can do. Somebody in this room probably has a marketing firm, and I was giving advice to somebody the other day about, I owned a marketing firm that did very well. If I were doing that today, I would be far bigger than I was when I did that original firm, because I would be doing it online. I would be doing everything virtually, and I would be able to make more money. So how do you take the disability and make it into something that doesn't matter, something that just allows you to solve problems that then allow you to solve other kinds of problems? That's the way I would encourage anybody who has whatever they have to look at it, right? Aaron, you may not be a wheelchair user, but maybe you're really shy, right? Or maybe you're a horrible public speaker or whatever. Everybody's got something that they have to deal with. So just figure out what your thing is, and then figure out what are the different steps that I can do, what are things that I can do. And those things that you can do to solve your issue are probably going to make your business stronger if you really think it through.
Very
Amazing.
nice. Very nice.
Have you heard of the Terry Walls protocol?
No, I haven't heard on it. I heard of it. I live it. Yeah.
So Terry lives here in our community in Iowa City.
Oh crap, that's right. You know, I totally forgot about that. I've been doing Terry Walls stuff for about 3 years now. It's made a real difference in my life. I can do things that I was told I wouldn't be able to do.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you so
Wow.
much for sharing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, kind of looking for silver linings and everything. That's, I guess, one good thing about what's happened this year is by going online, it's kind of removed barriers for a lot of folks who otherwise may have had barriers to some of these things. So it's nice to
Yes.
kind
Yep.
of as a way to
Absolutely.
help include more folks. We are coming up against the end of the hour, so I do want to ask our final traditional question that I'm sure you've heard in other communities. What can we as the community do to help you?
Yeah, the biggest thing is just if you've got a friend with a nonprofit who's looking to raise more money or looking to spread the word about what they're doing, which, doing this, I was just thinking about fundraising, but it's amazing how much, what a large network you're able to get to that you've never been able to get to. So anyway, any friend in nonprofit, I'm happy to talk to them. Even if they don't do business with us, I'm happy to share with them things that might be helpful to them. And maybe we'll end up doing something together because we love to help them. We've raised something north of $250,000 for nonprofits over the last 7-8 months, whatever it is now. And that is just continuing to go up and up and up. And we want to raise billions. That's our goal, is to raise billions for charity.
Nice. And then your email address again for those
Sean,
of us.
SEAN, at betternonprofits.com. And it's sometime very soon, like in the next 30 days, we're going to switch that over. But that'll still be live. We'll keep it active, so that'll still be a good email. But if you want to check us out, go to armchairtelethon.com.